Welcome to Wealth Hustle 247 podcast, your trusted guide to financial literacy, business innovation, and entrepreneurial success. Learn how to grow your wealth, make informed decisions, and turn your ideas into profitable ventures.
Want to unlock the mindset that attracts wealth? In this episode, we present Training Your Mind to Attract and Create Wealth, a comprehensive guide, the blueprint for success. Let's dive in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to get into something that I think is on a lot of people's minds, building wealth. But we're not just talking about the practical steps. We're going deeper, kind of uncovering the psychology behind it all. And your source material this time around, Training Your Mind to Attract and Create Wealth, it's a pretty comprehensive guide. It really got me thinking.
Yeah, it really does lay out a path, to achieving financial success.
Yeah.
But what I think is so interesting is how much it stresses the importance of mindset, alongside strategy.
It's like before you even open that budgeting app or, start looking at investment options, there's some work to do up here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The guide really digs into how our beliefs about money, and a lot of times these are subconscious beliefs that we've picked up, throughout our lives, how they can actually act as these invisible barriers to us.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard the sayings like money is the root of all evil.
Oh, yeah.
Or, rich people are greedy. Oh, yeah, all life. But I never really stopped to think about how those ideas might actually be affecting my own, financial journey. And that's where it gets really interesting. The guide calls this rewriting the script. And it suggests things like affirmations and adopting what's called a growth mindset.
Okay, growth mindset. Break that down for me. It sounds a little bit like, business jargon. What does that mean?
It's a simple but powerful idea, really. Instead of seeing challenges as roadblocks, that make you want to give up, you see them as opportunities to learn and grow and get better. So I'm curious, think about a recent challenge that you faced in your own life. How did you approach it?
That's a good question. Honestly, probably with a little bit of frustration. Maybe even avoiding it for a little bit.
And that's so normal. But imagine if instead of seeing that challenge as a setback, you saw it as a chance to develop a new skill or gain some valuable experience. That's really the essence of a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And it's something that the guide suggests we can apply to our financial journey as well.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts. It's about changing how you react to the bumps along the way. Speaking of bumps along the way, the guide also talks a lot about building specific habits for financial success. And some of them seem, like common sense, like budgeting and saving.
Yeah. But the guide goes deeper, kind of unpacking, why these habits are so crucial. Like, for example, delayed gratification. This is the ability to, resist that immediate reward so you can get something even better down the line. Have you ever, found yourself wanting to buy something impulsively, but then held back because you knew it wasn't really in line with, your bigger financial goals?
Oh, all the time. Those new shoes, that fancy gadget. But yeah, I am trying to get better at, reminding myself what I'm saving for, like a down payment on a place of my own.
There you go. So you're already practicing delayed gratification, even if you didn't realize it. These small choices, they really add up over time. And the guide even recommends a classic book to really dive deeper into this whole concept, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a great starting point for understanding how to build wealth by thinking differently about money.
I've heard of that one. Yeah. It's supposed to be like a real eye-opener. So we've talked about mindset, we've talked about habits, but I'm curious, what about the actual money-making part? What specific strategies does the guide suggest for, actually creating wealth?
That's where it gets exciting.
Mm-hmm.
This guide does not hold back. It covers a whole spectrum of options, from investing in stocks and bonds to exploring real estate, even starting your own business or creating passive income streams.
Passive income, that's something I'm really interested in. The guide even talks about using technology to your advantage. Like building a website or online course. That sounds right up my alley.
Yeah. Lay passive income is all about, finding ways to earn money without directly trading your time for it. And that could be anything, from rental income on a property to, royalties from a book you wrote to dividends from stocks. And yes, leveraging technology opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
But isn't there a lot of risk involved, though? Especially with newer technologies like cryptocurrency?
That's a really smart question. And the guide addresses that directly. While cryptocurrency can offer these potentially high returns, it's also incredibly volatile. You really have to do your research understand the technology, and be prepared for the ups and downs. The guide really emphasizes the importance of being informed before jumping into any investment, especially ones that are still evolving.
Makes sense. You don't want to get caught up in the hype without knowing what you're getting into. So it seems like there are like a ton of different ways to build wealth. But what about when things don't go as planned? Because let's face it, setbacks, they're bound to happen. Does the guide address that?
It does. It does. In fact, it has a surprisingly refreshing take on failure. Like, it encourages you to see setbacks not as, defeats, but as valuable learning experiences.
So instead of getting discouraged and giving up, you use those setbacks to figure out what went wrong and maybe adjust your approach. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The guide even suggests taking the time to analyze, your past financial mistakes to see if there are any patterns or recurring themes.
Yeah.
This can really help you, avoid repeating those same mistakes in the future.
It's like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
But, to be honest, sometimes it's hard to stay positive when things aren't going well financially. Do you have any tips for dealing with stress and burnout, especially when it comes to money matters?
This is where I think the guide's emphasis on a holistic approach to wealth really shines. It reminds us that true wealth isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about living a balanced and fulfilling life.
So it's not about, sacrificing your health or well-being in pursuit of financial success.
Not at all. In fact, the guide actually encourages you to prioritize self-care, whether that's, through exercise, meditation, spending time in nature, or pursuing hobbies that bring you joy.
All that stuff that seems unrelated to building wealth, but actually can play a crucial role in, supporting your overall well-being.
Absolutely. When you're feeling stressed and burned out,
Yeah.
it's just harder to make those sound financial decisions
Yeah.
and stay motivated on your journey.
So self-care is actually an investment in your future success.
Exactly. And the guide also talks about the importance of, setting boundaries and maintaining a healthy work-life balance.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in that always-on mentality, especially in today's digital age.
You're right. The guide encourages you to, disconnect from work regularly, set aside dedicated time for family and friends, and really engage in activities that recharge your batteries.
So creating a sustainable lifestyle that supports both, your financial well-being and your personal well-being.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, true wealth is about more than just money.
Right. It's about, living a life of purpose and fulfillment and abundance in all areas of your life, not just your bank account.
And that includes, giving back to others and making a positive impact on the world.
The guide touches on this as well, right? Encouraging readers to consider philanthropy and mentorship.
It's about recognizing that, wealth is not just about personal gain.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about using your resources to make a difference.
Yeah.
You know?
Whether it's donating to causes that you care about, volunteering your time, or mentoring others, there are just countless ways to kind of align your wealth with, a greater purpose.
And the guide suggests that, doing so can actually enhance your own sense of, fulfillment and well-being.
It's like a beautiful cycle. By giving back, we not only enrich the lives of others, but we also enrich our own lives in the process.
And ultimately, that's what true wealth is all about. Creating a life that's both prosperous and meaningful. Now, going back to strategies for actually building that wealth, we touched on passive income a little bit earlier. But what really caught my eye was the guide's discussion of leveraging technology, not just for passive income, but for managing and growing your wealth overall.
Yeah, there was a whole section on using tech to your advantage. What were some of the key takeaways there?
Well, first of all, the guide emphasizes the importance of financial literacy in the digital age. It's not enough to just know how to use a budgeting app. You really need to understand, the underlying principles of investing, risk management, and asset allocation.
So it's about using technology as a tool to amplify, your financial knowledge and skills, not as a crutch to avoid learning the fundamentals.
Exactly. And the guide highlights some really cool, tech tools and platforms that can help you do just that. For example, it mentions robo-advisors, which use algorithms to create and manage personalized investment portfolios based on your risk tolerance and financial goals.
That sounds pretty futuristic.
It is. And it's becoming increasingly popular, especially among, younger investors who are comfortable with technology and, appreciate the convenience of automated investing.
But aren't robo-advisors kind of like a set it and forget it approach, though? Don't you lose some control over your investments that way?
That's a valid concern, and the guide addresses it directly. While robo-advisors can be a great option for hands-off investing, it's still important to understand how they work, what fees they charge, and what limitations they might have.
So you're still in the driver's seat. You just have some, high-tech assistance to help you navigate the road.
Exactly. And the guide also discusses, other tech-driven tools like budgeting apps, online financial education platforms, and even cryptocurrency exchanges.
Speaking of cryptocurrency, the guide had a whole section on blockchain technology and its potential impact on the financial world. I gotta admit, I found that part a little bit overwhelming.
It's definitely a complex topic, but the guide does a good job of breaking down the basics. Essentially, blockchain is a decentralized and secure way to record and verify transactions. And it has the potential to revolutionize everything from banking to supply chain management.
So it's not just about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
Not at all. While cryptocurrency is the most well-known application of blockchain, the technology itself has much broader implications.
That's fascinating. It sounds like blockchain could be a real game changer in the world of finance.
It very well could be. And the guide encourages you to, stay informed about these emerging technologies and explore how they might fit into your overall financial strategy.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to do some more research on blockchain. It's amazing how technology is constantly evolving and creating new opportunities, for building wealth.
It is. And that's why the guide emphasizes the importance of continuous learning and adaptation. The financial landscape is always changing, so it's crucial to stay curious, embrace new knowledge, and be willing to adjust your approach as needed.
It's not about finding like a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about being adaptable and staying ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And speaking of staying ahead of the curve, the guide has some really interesting insights on, how to identify and seize emerging opportunities.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of opportunities are we talking about here?
Well, the guide encourages you to think beyond, traditional investments and explore alternative asset classes like real estate crowdfunding, peer-to-peer lending, or even investing in startups.
Those sound a bit riskier than, your typical stocks and bonds.
They can be, which is why the guide stresses the importance of thorough research and due diligence before diving into any alternative investment.
So it's about balancing potential rewards with potential risks.
Precisely. And the guide also provides some, practical tips for evaluating investment opportunities, like looking at the track record of the company or platform, understanding the underlying asset, and assessing the overall, market conditions.
It's like being a detective gathering all the clues before you make a decision.
Exactly. And the guide emphasizes that, successful investing is not about following the herd or chasing the latest trends. It's about developing a sound investment strategy based on your own individual goals, risk tolerance, and financial situation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about, taking ownership of your financial journey and making informed decisions that align with, your long-term vision.
You got it. And speaking of long-term vision, the guide ultimately encourages you to think beyond just building wealth for yourself. It challenges you to consider how your financial success can be used to make a positive impact on the world.
That's where the concept of legacy building comes in, right?
Exactly. The guide suggests that true wealth is not just about accumulating money. It's about using your resources to create something meaningful and lasting that extends beyond your own lifetime.
So it's about leaving a positive mark on the world, whether it's through philanthropy, mentorship, or simply living a life that inspires others.
Precisely. And the guide provides some inspiring examples of people who are doing just that, using their wealth to create positive change in their communities and beyond.
That's so powerful. It really elevates the whole concept of wealth creation from something purely personal to something that can benefit society as a whole.
And the guide suggests that aligning your financial goals with a greater purpose can actually enhance your own sense of fulfillment and well-being.
It's like that saying, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others.
Exactly. And the guide reminds us that building a legacy doesn't require immense wealth. Even small acts of kindness, generosity, and mentorship can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our own lives.
It's about shifting our focus from me to we, recognizing that we're all interconnected.
And then by helping others, we ultimately help ourselves.
This has been such an insightful conversation. The guide we've been exploring goes so much deeper than I initially expected. It's not just about the nuts and bolts of building wealth. It's about cultivating a mindset for success, embracing a holistic approach to well-being, and aligning your financial goals with a greater purpose. It really does challenge you to think differently about wealth and what it actually means to live, a rich and fulfilling life. But I think, a lot of people might hear that term legacy building and think, oh, that's only for like super wealthy people.
Right. It's a common misconception. And the guide actually addresses that. It's not about how much money you have. It's about the impact that you make with what you have.
Right.
It could be something as simple as mentoring someone in your field,
Mm-hmm.
volunteering your time for a cause you believe in, or even just being a good example for your family and friends.
So it's about like aligning your actions with your values and using whatever resources you have, whether that's time, money, or expertise, to create something positive that, ripples outward. I like that. It makes the whole idea of, legacy building feel much more attainable.
Exactly. And the guide even suggests starting by asking yourself some key questions. What are your core values? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world? What would you like to be remembered for?
Those are big questions. But yeah, I can see how reflecting on those things could really help you kind of figure out, what kind of legacy you want to build.
It's about connecting your financial journey to something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
And the guide gives some, thought-provoking examples of how people are doing this. Some are starting businesses that address social or environmental issues. Others are investing in companies that align with their ethical beliefs. And some are dedicating their time and resources to, philanthropic endeavors.
So you don't have to choose between, making money and making a difference. You can do both.
That's the beauty of it. And the guide argues that aligning your financial goals with a greater purpose can actually enhance your overall success. When you're passionate about what you're doing and you believe in the impact you're making, it just fuels your motivation and resilience.
It's like tapping into like a deeper source of energy. You're not just working for a paycheck. You're working towards something that truly matters to you.
Precisely. And that sense of purpose can carry you through the inevitable challenges and setbacks that come with any journey, especially, a financial one.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the psychology of wealth to the practical strategies for building it, and now this really inspiring concept of legacy building. What's like one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
I think the most important message is that, true wealth isn't just about the numbers in your bank account. It's about living a life that's rich in meaning, purpose, and connection. And it's about using your resources, however big or small they may be, to create something positive that ripples outward and leaves the world a little bit better than you found it.
Beautifully said. And remember, the journey starts today. Take that first step, however small it may be, towards aligning your financial goals with your values and your vision for the future. You might be surprised at the abundance that unfolds, not just in your bank account, but in your life as a whole. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
That's it for today's episode of Wealth Hustle 247. Be sure to follow, like, comment, and share with others. Keep pushing toward your goals, and we'll see you in the next episode.